Hello and welcome here to Talk FCB, and welcome back here to the channel, guys, and welcome here to a transfer video as we look ahead to the summer in terms of Barcelona. And in today's video, who could be leaving the club come the end of the season? Barcelona players and players who are on the books at Barcelona, who is not in Valverde's plans. We are going to be looking at all that and more, because this summer for me is a very, very big one. There are players in this squad here and now that I think need to be moved on. They need to make that next step in their career, and some of them, it has to be away from Barcelona. And also, of course, there are some players this season who've been away on loan and might come back into the picture next season, but if they don't, they are going to be on their way out this summer as we look to generate some funds that we're going to need if we're going to sign some big players this summer. So we are going to go from back to front, guys, and I'm going to start here with number one, which is Aleix Vidal, of course, brought in from Sevilla during the summer, of course, that we had our transfer van. He had to wait to make his Barcelona debut. Currently 28 years old, Aleix Vidal, but he does turn 29 in August. He has played 25 times this season under Ernesto Valverde, who's used him sort of as a bit of a utility player, somebody who can fill in when we need somebody on that right-hand side. Not really a right-back. He was brought in, you know, as a player who could maybe replace Dani Alves, but that really hasn't worked out. He's been used as a right midfielder, as a right winger. He was brought in from Sevilla for 18 million euros plus 4 million in bonuses, and he hasn't really, you know, justified that transfer fee in some ways. He hasn't really stamped his authority on the team. He hasn't really nailed down a spot. And I think under Ernesto Valverde, he's just really used him this season because there wasn't a lot better out there. But I just think this summer, Ernesto Valverde has to look at his squad. Vidal is one of those players who doesn't really fit in any sort of role as a real quality player. He's not a bad player. He could go to a decent La Liga side. Sevilla have been linked. But I would say at the end of the summer, I would not expect Aleix Vidal to still be a Barcelona player. Then we move on to another fullback, which is Lucas Digne, currently 24 years old. Now he turns 25 in July. One of those players who was brought in the summer of 2016 as a sort of younger generation. It was him, Andre Gomes, Denis Suarez. They all sort of came in and they tried to rejuvenate the Barcelona team, bringing in some youth, trying to see them flourish. And again, it hasn't really happened for Lucas Digne. Just 19 appearances this season. He's never really challenged Jordi Alba. There's always been a feeling that Lucas Digne has been the second sort of role in that left back position, and of course he was brought in for a decent amount of money, you know, 16.5 million euros plus an extra 4 million in bonuses. Wasn't cheap for a left back coming in at PSG at the time, and he has struggled to make the impact that he wanted to at the club. Now, according to Italian reports, Juventus have been strongly linked with the move to Lucas Digne. Once again this morning, Mundo Deportivo reiterating that line. Alexandro could be leaving them in the summer, and apparently they are the closest linked to Digne should he depart this summer. And then we move on to number 3, and a man that, to be fair, probably didn't expect to be on this list when he was signed in the January transfer window. Yerry Mina, of course, signed in January from Palmeiras for 11.8 million euros, and since that time in January, since he's been brought in as that sort of fourth centre-back, he has only made a grand total of 3 appearances for Barcelona. 1 in the Copa del Rey, 2 in La Liga, and it just hasn't really worked out for Yerry Mina. For whatever reason, Ernesto Valverde hasn't really played him, even though we have had some problems at centre-back, you know, like the suspensions, injuries, loss of form, peaking, and certainly tiring as the season has gone on. But for whatever reason, like I say, Ernesto Valverde hasn't really shown a lot of faith in him. Whether or not Ernesto Valverde was behind the signing in January, it is believed really that we went for Yerry Mina instead of Matthias de Ligt simply because Yerry Mina was the cheaper option, and it is believed that this summer that Yerry Mina could go out on loan, very similar to what has happened with Marlon. He's gone to Nice on a 2-year loan last summer. Same could happen with Mina, just to gain some European experience. But at the same time, when we signed him, we knew that he didn't have that experience. If we didn't count on him, if Ernesto Valverde wasn't going to trust in him, he simply should not have been signed. It hasn't worked out yet. What will happen with Mina come the summer? Fourth on the list is none other than Andre Gomes, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think this has been coming now for quite a few years. Again, another player that was brought in during that 2016 transfer window for a whopping fee as well, it has to be said. Andre Gomes brought in for 35 million euros up front, plus an extra 20 million euros in variables and add-ons, one of which was winning La Liga, which we've had to pay Valencia, I believe, 1 million in bonuses for the win this season. But clearly, it has not worked out at all for Andre Gomes at Barcelona. There's been a a lack of confidence. I think he's been played out of position a lot of the time as well. But for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. 31 appearances in all competitions this season. Valverde has used him quite a lot, but like I say, sometimes that'll be out on the right, sometimes even on the left. Part of the front three we've seen him in past years gone by. He hasn't really been used in his natural centre midfield position as often as he would have liked, but at the same time, whenever he has been used in that role, he is often underwhelmed. And like I say, it does look like this season now, at the end of the season, they're going to sit down. Apparently, Gomes has already been told that he will be sold in the summer, and he can understand that decision. Tottenham reportedly are interested in his services. They also showed an interest last summer and also in the January transfer window. And I think both the club and Gomes right now are ready to cut their losses. Gomes really wanted to succeed here. I've got no problem at all with his personality. He clearly wanted to be a success here, but it hasn't worked out, and we will try to recoup as much as we can from that big transfer fee that we did pay to Valencia back in 2016. Then on to number 5, which is Rafinha Alcantara, brother of Thiago, of course, 25 years old currently, and he's currently, of course, out on loan to Serie A side Inter Milan, and he has done very, very well there, has to be said. He's gone to Inter, he's established himself very, very quickly under Spalletti, and he's become a really good player. He's really playing with confidence now. He's playing week in, week out. He's over his injury problems. That was a big part of it, of course. Rafinha, very, very unlucky in recent time, the serious injuries that he suffered, and he didn't hardly play at all in the last sort of year or two at Barcelona. But when he was in the team at Barcelona, I did like to watch him. I did think there was something about him, a bit of talent there, a little bit of flair in that midfield. He's somebody who's very versatile as well. He can play in the centre, he can play wide, he can play as part of the front three, and certainly under Luis Enrique, I did like the look of Rafinha, and to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't be completely abject to keeping him on and seeing what he could do under Ernesto Valverde. But reports in Italy say that Inter Milan do want to make the move permanent. They do want to sign Rafinha on a permanent deal. They do have a €35 million buy option if they want to exercise that permanent option on Rafinha. But apparently they don't want to pay that much. They want to try and reduce the fee. I don't think we should. If they want him, if they've been impressed with him, he's made 15 appearances so far in his time in Serie A since January. He's made 3 assists in that time. He's been a very big part of their midfield. He's got his first goal for Inter on Sunday in their big, big win against Udinese. And if Inter want him, if they're happy with him, they should have no problem at all paying that €35 million. And if they don't, like I say, I wouldn't be too adverse to asking him back and seeing what he can do. Then we move on to number 6, which is also, for me, an exciting midfield player, which is Denis Suarez, still just 24 years old. A lot of his career still to go. He is still a prospect that is developing. Only 25 appearances in all competitions this season, and a lot of those, it has to be said, has been off the bench. Another player, really, that Ernesto Valverde hasn't really put a lot of trust in, doesn't seem to completely have faith in Denis Suarez, and he was somebody, again, who was brought in that 2016 season, and probably one of the best of that bunch, and he was brought in and re-signed, really, from Villarreal for just €3.2 million. Napoli have showed an interest over the past year or so. Sarri and their team there really want to get him on board, and I think just like Rafinha, he would be a real hit in Serie A. But apparently Denis Suarez himself wants to stay. After the Copa del Rey final, he was asked about his future. He said, "There's no doubt in my mind, I want to be a success at Barcelona. I want to stay here." But will the club and will Ernesto Valverde feel the same way? Will Denis get the chance that he deserves? Will he get the opportunities as the season draws to a close, and is he in Valverde's plans for the next season? We're going to have to wait and see. Number 7 is yet another player who is currently out on loan from the club, Gerard Deulofeu, 24 years old, another player that does have a long time in his career to get going, and he has really struggled for form and consistency over the duration of his career so far. He's currently in the Premier League on loan at Watford since January. He failed to really impress on his return to Barcelona. Watford reportedly, under Javi Gracia at the moment, the Spanish coach, they want to extend that Deulofeu loan and possibly make it permanent if possible. And to be honest, at Watford, Deulofeu started very, very brightly indeed. He shone against Chelsea in just his second game. He's got a goal and an assist in that game, but unfortunately then he suffered an injury after that, which has halted his progress. And he has then just made 6 Premier League appearances since joining Watford on loan in January. So clearly they want to see more of him. I don't really think that he has a future under Valverde. I don't really think he has a future at Barcelona. He was quite annoyed actually recently after he was left off the official La Liga title winning Barca Barcelona t-shirts that had all the players' names, but there were a few excluded from that list, and Deulofeu unfortunately was one of those names, and clearly he did play a part, so he should have been on there, and I think he's rightly aggrieved by that. Then on to number 8, another player who is out on loan currently, Munir El Haddadi, still just 22 years old, so still a very young player, still somebody who's got a lot of time to grow and improve. He has been on loan at Alaves throughout this season so far, and I have to say, he has been outstanding in that team who have stayed up in La Liga. They've had a good season, especially since Abelardo has come in. They've been really, really impressive, and Munir El Haddadi has been a very, very big part of that as well. He's been playing week in, week out. He's had the confidence of the coach. He's playing in a club where he's a bit of the star. He's a bit of the go-to guy, and he's done really, really well. 31 appearances in the league this season. He scored 9 times and assisted 6 goals as well, and he played a really big part as well in the Copa del Rey, where Alaves went a decent distance and only went out in the end to Valencia in the quarterfinals. He scored 4 in 4 appearances in the Copa del Rey, taking his season total to 13 goals and 7 assists in all competitions, which I have to say, Munir this season has been very good. His overall play is good. He's certainly showed some end product as well, and it'll be very, very interesting to see what we do with him this summer. Will we bring him back, maybe offload another one of our forwards and use Munir as a squad player, or will we use this good season potentially to cash in on him and see what we can get for Munir's very good development? And where he could end up next is very much right now up in the air. And finally, we do move on to the final player on my list. You probably guessed it by this point in the video. We are going to move on to our centre forward, Paco Alcacer, who could be on his way out this season after playing very much so a bit part role since he arrived at the club from Valencia, which was a pretty big fee at the time, 30 million euros to sign him. He's made just 21 appearances this season. He scored 7 goals in all competitions. And for me, to be honest, Alcacer's future revolves very much so around Antoine Griezmann. Are we going to get Griezmann? Are we then going to maybe play Paco Alcacer as a backup to him, as he has been doing to Luis Suarez? But if we keep Suarez as well, Griezmann and Suarez, surely that would mean a severe lack of game time to Paco Alcacer, who already really doesn't play enough. I think this summer Paco is going to say, enough is enough. I've tried my hardest to make my breakthrough here. It hasn't quite happened. He's still a very good player, 24 right now, 25 in August, so he still has very many years left in his career as a forward. He has been linked with Southampton in the past. He has been linked with clubs in the Premier League, or he could look to once again possibly stay in La Liga and go to one of the clubs, like Sevilla's, like your Valencia's, one of those kind of teams to reignite his career in La Liga. So we'll have to see basically what happens with him, how his personal feelings are, if he's happy with his game time, he's happy with his development, and also, of course, what happens around him. Who comes in? Are we going to recall Munir? All of those things will impact Paco, and if we do sell him, we will once again hope to recoup some of that fee, but once again, we might fall short. We're not a good selling team, and often we don't get the fees that we should for players, even though some of these guys out here do have some real quality and should go for decent fees. So that is basically it, guys, for the 9 players which I personally believe could be leaving the club this summer and could leave Barcelona for good. Obviously, there are other players that could be in the mix. A lot of rumours right now linking Ousmane Dembele with a loan move or even a permanent move away from the club. Though I'm hoping that is not the case and is not going to happen. We should be counting on Dembele, putting more faith in him and seeing him on the pitch much more often indeed. But leave your thoughts down below, guys, on all of these 9 players and any others at all that you do have an interest in. This is the first few really of many, many transfer videos to come. We are going to be covering all bases on Barcelona this summer, and I hope you guys will be around to see it and enjoy the complete circus that it will be surrounding Barcelona. Thank you as always for joining me, guys. I will see you soon indeed, but until then, as always, Vesca El Barça.